Long before the name Biafra became a cry, a memory, or a movement, the land itself already existed. Long before maps were drawn by foreigners, before borders were forced on people, life was already flowing naturally in the region that would later be called Eastern Nigeria. People lived there for centuries. They farmed the land, traded with neighbors, raised families, worshipped their gods, respected their ancestors, and buried their dead with honor. The Igbo people and other ethnic groups of the region lived in organized societies. They had village assemblies, age grades, traditional laws, markets, and strong systems of justice. Authority came from the people, from elders, from customs passed down through generations. Life was not perfect, but it was theirs. What they did not have was Nigeria. Nigeria did not grow naturally like a tree from the soil. Nigeria was built like a machine. In 1914, the British colonial government decided to join many different peoples into one country. The North, the West, and the East were merged and named Nigeria. This decision was not made for unity, peace, or love. It was made for convenience and profit. Ruling one large territory was cheaper and easier for Britain than ruling many small ones. These regions were very different. They spoke different languages. They practiced different religions. They had different cultures, histories, and systems of leadership. Many did not trust one another, but the British ignored these differences. They ruled everyone as one and controlled resources for their own benefit. For decades, Britain remained in charge. They controlled education, the economy, the military, and politics. They favored some groups over others. They deepened divisions, and when they were ready to leave, they did not fix the problems they created. In 1960, Nigeria gained independence. The British flag was lowered, and Nigerians celebrated. But behind the celebration was a fragile country. Britain handed power to Nigerian leaders, but left behind a deeply divided nation with weak foundations. From the very beginning, politics followed ethnic lines. Leaders cared more about their regions than the nation. Elections were filled with manipulation and fraud. Power was unevenly shared. Fear and suspicion grew quietly, like a sickness spreading under the skin. In the eastern region lived the Igbo people and other groups. They believed strongly in education, hard work, and enterprise. They sent their children to school. They learned trades. They took risks. Many left the east and moved to other parts of Nigeria to look for opportunities. By the early 1960s, Igbo people were everywhere, in the north, in the west, in cities and towns across the country. They worked as civil servants, traders, technicians, and professionals. Their success was visible, but instead of admiration, it created jealousy and resentment. Some began to see them as outsiders who had come to take over. Old tribal fears were awakened. Political leaders used these fears to gain support. Words became poisonous. Rumors spread. Nigeria's democracy did not last long. Corruption destroyed trust in civilian government. Elections were rigged openly. Violence followed political competition. The military began to believe that politicians were destroying the country and that only soldiers could save it. In January 1966, young military officers carried out Nigeria's first coup. Several top political leaders were killed. Most of the officers involved were Igbo, and most of the leaders killed were from the north and west. Although the coup was not officially ethnic, it was seen as one. Fear spread across the country like wildfire. By July 1966, northern officers staged a counter-coup. This time, revenge was the motive. Igbo soldiers were hunted down and murdered in the barracks. But the violence did not stop within the military. It spilled into the streets. Across northern Nigeria, ordinary Igbo men, women, and children were attacked. They were dragged from their homes. They were slaughtered in markets. They were killed in buses and trains. Pregnant women were murdered. Children were not spared. The killings went on for weeks. Thousands died. Some say tens of thousands. Trains arrived in the eastern region filled with corpses. Survivors returned with nothing but the clothes they wore and the trauma in their minds. The Nigerian government failed to protect them. Security forces stood by. Justice was silent. The message was clear. You are not safe. At that time, the military governor of the eastern region was Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu. He listened to the stories. He saw the refugees. He counted the dead. To him and many others, Nigeria had failed its most basic duty, to protect its citizens. Meetings were held between regional leaders. Peace talks took place in Ghana. The Aburi Accord promised true regional autonomy and safety. Hope briefly returned, but when the leaders returned to Nigeria, the agreement was ignored. Trust was broken completely. On May 30th, 1967, Ojukwu made a historic announcement. He declared the eastern region an independent nation, the Republic of Biafra. For the people, it was not about pride, it was about survival. Nigeria rejected it. War began. From 1967 to 1970, Nigeria and Biafra fought a brutal civil war. Nigeria imposed a total blockade, food was cut off, medicine was blocked, relief supplies were stopped, children starved. Images of swollen bellies and dying infants shocked the world. Villages disappeared, families were destroyed. Over 2 million people, mostly civilians, died, many from hunger, not bullets. Biafra fought bravely, but was outnumbered and outgunned. On January 15, 1970, Biafra surrendered. Nigeria said, "No victor, no vanquished." But the suffering did not end. After the war, Igbo people returned home to ruins. Their properties were taken, their bank accounts were wiped clean. No matter how much money they had, they were given just 20 pounds. Reconstruction was slow. Political power remained distant. Biafra was defeated, but it was not forgotten. Stories were told quietly. Songs were sung in low voices. The memory lived on. Years passed. A new generation was born. One of them was Nnamdi Kanu. He did not experience the war directly, but the war lived inside him through stories. He grew up hearing about starvation, betrayal, and silence. He watched his people complain of marginalization, poor roads, lack of federal presence, limited opportunities. To him, Nigeria never truly healed. In 2012, Nnamdi Kanu emerged as a leading voice of the new Biafra movement. Through Radio Biafra, he spoke boldly. He did not call for war, he demanded a referendum, the right to choose. Young people listened. The government reacted with fear. In 2015, Nnamdi Kanu was arrested.